conversation and reflecting and thinking about what it means to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day and what it means that nationally our country still celebrates genocide. And we're going to start out with a short clip about Standing Rock. We'll engage in some conversations, thinking about the question, how do we work against the legacy of colonization? And because this is a stop on the gallery walk, we're kind of going to do a repetitive, every 20 minutes start the film again for people, and you're welcome to stay throughout the whole time and help us engage with folks as they come in and out of the space. And I'll start out with the film.
There's also, everyone wants, well, there's great donuts here and apples, but also if you want one of the gallery walk where it tells you everywhere to go, yeah, grab one of those. We have anyone else want one?
Oh, I know. I have a couple of places I know I want to.
The Mother Earth is Unchi Maka, the grandmother of everything. And the water is her blood. And to this blood we live.
We've been here for thousands of years. We have always been citizens of these lands.
But whenever there's a resource that needs to be exploited, our lands just kept getting taken. We didn't have say. And that has been inflicted on our people for over 200 years.
Native Americans have some of the highest rates of poverty, dropout rates, suicide rates, being victims to police aggression and violence.
We have continued collectively to be abused. And I think people are tired of being treated like they're less citizens.
We don't have any place else to go. These are our only remaining homelands. We have to protect them. Enough's enough.
Since 2006, there's been a rush of companies coming into the state of North Dakota to develop oil. But here at Standing Rock, we have a resolution that goes back all the way to 2007. It says we don't want any pipelines to cross our ancestral lands. But yet, in 2014, they're starting to steamroll the Dakota Access Pipeline through, threatening our water.
The original route went near Bismarck, a community that's 90% white, and they decided to not take that route because they don't want to have the pipeline near their water. And then you have us saying the same thing, but we didn't matter.
My son's buried on top of the hills here. And I said, who would build a pipeline next to my son's grave? Who would do that? And so I told Dakota Access, remember me, remember my face. I will be standing there. I wasn't an activist or any of these things. I'm a mom. I didn't know what to do. So I made a video on Facebook in my hotel room, and I asked people to come. The battle has just begun. I will stand to protect the water and the land. I'm asking each of you to come stand with us. People started coming. The camp here started exploding with people. And I thought in my heart, we're gonna win this.
This is a historic moment in time, first time ever in the United States where over 300 tribes have congregated and said they'll stand in solidarity and unite with prayer. That is something that is beautiful.
Really awful things happen to different tribes, and it's so deeply spiritually moving that I think when people see it happen to other tribes, their spirit is called to act because it happened to us too.
It was the morning of September 3rd. They called me and said, LaDonna, the bulldozer is going through the sacred site. And people were crying and hollering, and all these nations were standing together. Then the man pepper sprayed people, and there was a woman singing at dog on people.
The dog has blood in its nose and its mouth.
Look at me.
The worst crime that was committed by the demonstrators was locking himself on a piece of equipment. But the individuals who released guard dogs on demonstrators, they didn't get charged with anything. Last time I checked, it was 135 arrests that were made. We have a state of emergency by the governor. We have National Guard called in. So you have to step back and say, well, what really is going on here?
What we see is we have militarized the energy industry with a governor who believes that you can treat Indian people poorly. 3 years ago, a woman froze to death on the Standing Rock Reservation because she couldn't pay her heating bill. And now you're planning a $3.9 billion pipeline that will help nobody but oil companies. It's really infrastructure for oil companies and not for people.
They're realizing billions of dollars in revenue. But if you look at the top 10 poorest counties in this nation, 2 of them are on Standing Rock. We're not opposed to economic development. We're not opposed to energy independence, but we're tired of paying for it.
When we talk about our defense for land and water, some of us will be arrested.
The bloodline that I come from, Chief Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, that's a line of warriors and chiefs. So to uphold that tradition and that honor is something that I see now that I gotta do. It's everybody at this camp versus the governor, chief of police, the energy and oil companies. We have to make sure that this black snake is killed. We have to look within our heart to figure out how far are we willing to go. I was arrested, but how do you want to do it? What is your gift? What is your talent? What is your spirit telling you that you want to do?
For most of my adult life, I have battled fossil fuel companies. And I dreamed that we should ride to the oil source. So we rode our horses 3 days to face our enemy and say, we're here. And we're not gonna let you do this. When our ancestors went into battle, we didn't know what the consequences were gonna be. All we knew is that if we did nothing, things would not go well for our children. Don't operate out of fear. Operate out of hope. Because with hope, everything is possible. I was very proud to ride with all those riders. We went to the monster. We faced the monster. You know, I may not be able to stop them from laying pipe because it is already laid, but they have no oil in it. So I'll pray that that oil will never go.
The only thing that keeps me going is prayer. And I have faith that my prayers are being heard. Because there's a company that's saying, we're gonna build this no matter what. And they're gonna say this pipeline will never break. It's gonna break. And who's gonna pay the cost?
Native people, we're like pieces of people. We all have this trauma. I used to tell people when I was young, they would say, and what do you Indians want? The right to be left alone to live. Now I don't see that as an option. Now we must do our best to live and show the rest of the world how to live.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming tonight. We're gathered here to talk about the legacy of colonization and what it means to be here on stolen land. And also, how can we learn
from the struggles of Indigenous people. And the film that just played was Mani Winchoni, it's Water is Life, and it was about a summary about Standing Rock. And so the way that the program's gonna work tonight is about every 20 minutes we'll replay the film again, because we are a stop on the gallery walk list, and so people will be coming in and out. But for those of you coming, this is hosted by Brattleboro Solidarity. We're a group of educators looking to engage in conversations about the world and reflect on our own actions in the world. And so we just wanted to open up the mic for anyone who wanted to share some reflections they had watching the film. I know in my conversation I heard people talking about really what does it mean, how do we move forward, taking into account that the land is being commodified, and how do we move forward in a way that's beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, please let us know if you would like to come forward and say anything. Also, for anyone that has just kind of entered this space, we do have the gallery walk pamphlet if you want to grab one of those, and also cider and donuts and apples. Also, we're having a teach-in tomorrow, and it's hosted by the Spark Teacher Education, and it is the pedagogy of Indigenous resistance and solidarity. So we have flyers up here if you want to learn more about that. It's from 9:30 to 3:30 tomorrow. So you can talk to any one of us up here if you want to find out more information or grab one of these flyers. So I think now, as Becca said, a lot of us here are teachers, and so we think about how we engage in conversation with our students around these issues. But also having to remember the stories that we were told and the stories of our families. So a couple of us have prepared some statements that we're happy to read right now. Would anyone like to? I can go ahead and read mine first. Okay. Okay. I've grown up with a couple stories in my head about the history of my family. Only a few generations back in my family, on both sides, my ancestors immigrated from Ireland to Australia, some of them as a result of what is known commonly as the Great Potato Famine in Ireland, a time in which great amounts of cattle, pigs, grain, and eggs were exported abroad by the British landlords while poor peasants starved, forcing mass migration. Another story I heard was that for some far back relatives were sent to Australia for stealing. It was a common joke in my family that my mother's side of the family were a bunch of Irish criminals that were sent to Australia, referring to Australia as a site of a penal colony controlled by the British, where between 1788 and 1868 over 150,000 people were transported by the British Empire to various penal colonies in Australia. As a child growing up in Australia, I learned about the discovery of Australia by Captain James Cook, the great navigator, in 1770. I grew up in a white suburban neighborhood of Melbourne, went to private Catholic schools, and have no memory of meeting one person of color during my childhood in Southern Australia. To me, my child's mind, Australians were white. At the age of 10, my immediate family moved to Minnesota. Here in the US, my family started celebrating Thanksgiving, referring to it as one of those American things we had adopted. We had no attachment to it, but joined in making a big meal together. I learned here that, like Captain Cook in Australia, Columbus had discovered the Americas. There are many things wrong in these few passages. The history of Australia, like here, is one of plunder, genocide, violence, resource extraction, disease, boarding schools, the dehumanization of the people, and intentional misinformation and lack of information. As an educator and a student, I will continue to find the ways to correct this information, both within myself and with those around me, to learn the true history and the larger patterns that connect them. I will stand in solidarity with the oppression and exploitation of all people.
And so we'd like people to have conversations, both in writing and with each other right now, on what we will do to work against the legacy of colonization. So we will turn and talk to someone that you don't know, introduce yourself. Find someone in the space that you haven't already talked to, and see if you can share with them one thing that you think people are doing around us and that you might do to work against the legacy of colonization.
Thank you. Suggestive of Sprinkle, that's what I think. Nice solo, man.
Is it okay for me to record this for Brattleboro Community Television?
Sure, fine with me.
Cool. All right, thanks.
Tell it, you know, if you write the Tunnel Trio.
Tunnel
Trio. 3 people.
Trio, Tunnel
Trio.
Television, yeah.
The Tunnel Trio.
Gotcha.
Question when
Tunnel
you're starting to
Trio.
know if we can keep going with it. I don't know how long y'all are able to stay.
Right. We don't mind leaving now or one more song after, you know, if that's okay.
One more is what I got time.
He wants the videotape.
Okay, great.
For the television.
Thank you to all who are coming. We're gonna have one more song and then we're gonna be playing the video again. But we'd like to bring some energy into the room. Or I guess we're not in a room, we're outside at a park. But I think in order for us to continue this struggle against the legacy of colonization, we have to help lift each other up and give each other energy to continue the struggle. Because we don't have a choice to not engage. We're a part of it. So let's get some energy in the room and give it up for the Tunnel Trio for one more song. Woo! so much. That was Tunnel Trio. Let's give it up one more time.
Happy Indigenous Peoples Day!
We are here today to stand against Columbus Day. We now know it as Indigenous Peoples Day. But we still have to think about, why do we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day? And how do we continue to work against the legacy of colonization? Reflecting on this day and my own ancestors. My family came to the Americas from Scotland, a colonized people themselves that in escaping from the English rule, they themselves became the colonizers. They participated in the stealing of land and turned an eye as wealth was accumulated and people were put down. So I stand here today against the legacy of my ancestors. And I stand here today in solidarity with Indigenous struggles. And in doing so, I want to continue to work against the privatization of all land. And we encourage everyone to, as we play the video again about Standing Rock and the struggle to stop a pipeline, we encourage people to engage with one another in conversation. And also there's a banner on the floor here, how you and your community will continue to work against the legacy of colonization. Thank you all so much. And the video is about 8 minutes, so we hope you'll stick around and engage in conversation afterward.
We don't have any place else to go. These are our only remaining homelands. We have to protect them. Enough's enough.
Since 2006, there's been a rush of companies coming into the state of North Dakota to develop oil. But here at Standing Rock, we have a resolution that goes back all the way to 2007 that says we don't want any pipelines to cross our ancestral lands. But yet, in 2014, they're starting to steamroll the Dakota Access Pipeline through, threatening our water.
The original route went near Bismarck, a community that's 90% white, and they decided to not take that route because they don't want to have the pipeline near their water. And then you have us saying the same thing, but we didn't matter.
My son's buried on top of the hills here. And I said, who would build a pipeline next to my son's grave? Who would do that? And so I told Dakota Access, remember me, remember my face. I will be standing there. I wasn't an activist or any of these things. I'm a mom. I didn't know what to do. So I made a video on Facebook in my hotel room, and I asked people to come.
The battle has just begun. I will stand to protect the water and the land. I'm asking each of you to come stand with us.
People started coming. The camp here started exploding with people. And I thought in my heart, we're going to win this.
This is a historic moment in time, first time ever in the United States where over 300 tribes have congregated and said they'll stand in solidarity and unite with prayer. That is something that is beautiful.
Really awful things happen to different tribes, and it's so deeply spiritually wounding that I think when people see it happen to other tribes, our spirit is called to act because it happened to us too.
It was the morning of September 3rd. They called me and said, LaDonna, the bulldozer is going through the sacred site. And people were crying and hollering, and all these nations were standing together. But then the man pepper sprayed people, and there was a woman singing a dog on people.
The dog has blood in its nose and its mouth.
Look at him.
worst crime that was committed by the demonstrators was locking himself on a piece of equipment. But the individuals who released guard dogs on demonstrators, they didn't get charged with anything. Last time I checked, it was 135 arrests that were made. We have a state of emergency by the governor. We have National Guard called in. So you have to step back and say, well, what really is going on here?
What we see is we have militarized the energy industry with a governor who believes that you can treat Indian people poorly. 3 years ago, a woman froze to death on the Standing Rock Reservation because she couldn't pay her heating bill. And now you're planning a $3.9 billion pipeline that will help nobody but oil companies. It's really infrastructure for oil companies and not for people.
They're realizing billions of dollars in revenue. But if you look at the top 10 poorest counties in this nation, 2 of them are on Standing Rock. We're not opposed to economic development. We're not opposed to energy independence, but we're tired of paying for it.
When we talk about our defense for land and water, some of us will be arrested.
The bloodline that I come from, Chief Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, that's a line of warriors and chiefs. So to uphold that tradition and that honor is something that I see now that I gotta do. It's everybody at this camp versus the governor, chief of police, the energy and oil companies. We have to make sure that this black snake is killed. We have to look within our heart to figure out how far are we willing to go. I was arrested, but how do you want to do it? What is your gift? What is your talent? What is your spirit telling you that you want to do?
For most of my adult life, I have battled fossil fuel companies. And I dreamed that we should ride to the oil source. So we rode our horses 3 days to face our enemy and say, we're here. And we're not going to let you do this. When our ancestors went into battle, we didn't know what the consequences were going to be. All we knew is that if we did nothing, things would not go well for our children. Don't operate out of fear. Operate out of hope. Because with hope, everything is possible. I was very proud to ride with all those riders. We went to the monster, and we faced the monster. You know, I may not be able to stop them from laying pipe because it is already laid, but they have no oil in it. So I'll pray that that oil will never go.
The only thing that keeps me going is prayer. And I have to have faith that my prayers are being heard. Because there's a company that's saying, we're gonna build this no matter what. And they'll say this pipeline will never break. It's gonna break. And who's gonna pay the cost?
Native people, we're like pieces of people. We all have this trauma. I used to tell people when I was young, they'd say, and what do you Indians want? The right to be left alone to live. Now I don't see that as an option. Now we must do our best to live and show the rest of the world how to live.
We are here today to stand against the legacy of Columbus and the colonization that he began in the Americas, but he was not the only one who participated in that colonization. And so we'd like you to find someone that you haven't yet talked to tonight and talk to them about how do you work in solidarity with Indigenous struggles and stand against the legacy of colonization. And let's bring some energy into the park, because we know that this is a big struggle that's larger than ourselves, but that we can connect with each other to build some strength. So join up and talk to someone you have not yet talked to tonight.